I sang that song for more than 60 years, a song of praise to Joseph Smith, the prophet of the Restoration and founder of the LDS Church, the church I served as a bishop for 5 years. I knew the church was true. I was a faithful Latter-day Saint. My life has been built on certain truths, but wishing doesn't change the truth. Jesus said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free." When I finally learned the truth about the real history and doctrines of Mormonism, I realized that I was following the gospel of Joseph Smith and not the gospel of Jesus Christ. I have come to learn that many others have made a similar journey out of the bondage of religion and into an authentic relationship with Jesus. And that's what this show is all about. Courageous people who want to share their story, hoping that you, the viewer, will discover the same new life in Jesus. So if you're a Latter-day Saint who is struggling with questions or seeking a genuine encounter with the Savior, we invite you to join us tonight. We have a joyful message that we want to share with you. Good evening and welcome to the Ex-Mormon Files here in the heart of Salt Lake City. I'm your host, Bishop Earl, and I appreciate you watching this evening, spending some of your time with us. Really happy tonight to introduce to you Mary Jane Badger. Mary Jane, thanks for coming. And
thank you.
You have a lot of nicknames, don't you? MJ and Janie. And
Yep, I do.
Anyway, we'll call you Mary Jane, I guess, for tonight. But
okay.
Anyway, it's nice to have you here, and
thank you.
Appreciate you sharing your story.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh gosh, my pleasure. Let's, as we usually do, cover a little bit of your history. You were born in the church, were you?
Yes, I was. I was born here in Salt Lake City. Yeah. I'm the 7th of 9 children, a big, very Mormon family. I usually say I come from a royal Mormon family. My great-great-grandfather is John Taylor, who's the 3rd prophet of the LDS Church, and that's a big part of our family structure. And
a lot of pride there, or a lot of discussion about pioneer heritage.
There is, and it all growing up, it was everybody knew, and it was really is a source of pride and focus. Yeah. So it's sometimes hard for me to tear apart the heritage from the faith of my family, how they feel.
All they went through to get out here to Utah and everything.
Yeah.
So were you active as a young child? And your family was, you went to church all the time, primary? And
I did, all those things.
Learned all the songs and
I
did all the things.
I did, and it seemed like the normal thing to have a little rebellious period in high school, and I did that too in my first year of college, but I never questioned the church. I never even thought about questioning it. I just knew it was true.
Yeah, and you went to seminary, did you?
Yeah, I graduated from seminary. I had to do a lot of makeup classes to get the graduation, but I did.
During that rebellious period you're talking about. Well, I think a lot of kids go through that for sure, but but never, again, like you say, never any question that the church was true. I mean, that was just, and you bore your testimony probably, and believed Joseph Smith was a prophet. And had you read the Book of Mormon at that point? And had you?
Yeah. Well, I had for sure by the time I went on an LDS mission when I was 21.
Oh, where'd you go?
I went to London, England.
Okay. How was that?
It was good. It was hard.
Those were 18-month missions.
18 months, yes.
And you had to wait till you were 21.
I had to wait till I was 21.
Now it's changed
I had
to 19, I
my
guess,
farewell on my 21st birthday.
Wow.
And spent Christmas in the MTC.
Yeah.
But I tried really hard to please God, and I felt like giving back to God and wanting to please God.
Had others in your family, I guess, gone on missions, and you felt kind of committed to do that? Or?
They had. I didn't feel committed. I surprised everybody by going because at that time, a long time ago, it wasn't as usual for young ladies to go. And so, and I kind of had to fight my way. My church leaders didn't like so much women going, but I persevered. And
you felt you wanted to please God, and
and
I'm sure your parents were proud of you again.
Yeah. So they didn't expect it, but I did have an older brother, and then my younger brothers went on missions too. Yeah.
Now, you went through the temple, I guess, before you went on
Yes.
your mission. How was
Yes.
that experience?
It was surprising.
That's a good way to say it, isn't
Yeah.
it?
I thought that I was prepared for it. I remember focusing on my brother, who's just older than me, and because my family was there, and
Sure.
those who had gone through the temple, and I just focused on him. I thought, okay, if he's here, this is okay, because I don't think anything prepared me for
What you experienced in there. It is shocking, would you say?
Yeah.
Surprising?
It's very surprising.
You don't, they don't talk about it
Yeah.
outside the temple, so you're not really given all the details. Yeah.
Right.
Did
The
you feel-
symbolism surprised me, because it had been explained to me that one of the reasons Mormons don't look at the cross is because it's a symbol and we're not symbolic,
And yet the temple is
yeah,
full of
so that was surprising,
symbols.
but
Did you know then that they were Masonic symbols?
I didn't.
The all-seeing eye and the marks on the garments and
No,
stuff?
I had no idea.
I didn't either. I didn't
had
pay
no
attention
idea.
to that. They explain it away in the
Yeah.
temple, so it, but
Yeah. I had no idea.
yeah. So when you go out on your mission, and I've asked others this because it struck me so forcefully later, did you feel like you were preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ? Were you preaching Christ? Were you preaching the church, the Joseph Smith story, Book of Mormon? What were you
That's
preaching?
a good question. I don't feel like I was preaching Jesus Christ.
No.
I feel like I was preaching the church and the restored church and
Yeah.
the only true church on the earth.
That's what you're preaching,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and a lot of the Joseph Smith story, of course, was focal to the whole
right.
mission
They tried to get the Book of Mormon into their hands and
Yeah.
reading it and praying about it as
Yeah.
soon as possible.
Yeah,
It's
and I was
funny,
sure it
isn't
was
it?
true.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I knew what it was, but I knew it was true. So I trusted my family. I trusted
Yeah.
I
Okay.
believed it was.
Yeah. So you come home and
Came
what
home.
happens?
I married one of my district leaders.
Oh, you
and-
did?
Yeah.
Now
And
you were good on your mission, of course.
good, yes.
Yeah, I mean
yes,
you were
Yes.
proper on your mission.
I was
but-
proper. Yes. Yes.
But you
we
came
were.
home and he
Came
lived
home.
here in Utah too?
No, he
or-
was from California,
Oh.
and we started corresponding. I came home first, and we started corresponding,
Oh,
and so we got married in the temple, and
Salt Lake Temple,
in the
was it?
Salt Lake Temple, and we adopted 2 children,
Okay.
2 great sons that are grown-ups
Oh,
now, but
yeah.
they're really great.
oh, neat.
And but I started to question things because things didn't go as planned, and I've sort of felt like it was always on me. I was never good enough. I wasn't good enough to fit in. I felt like I was on the outside of the circle, looking in, and I believed that everybody in the circle knew the church was true. So
Even
I
though
had
you'd
to
been
too.
on a mission and you had
Yeah.
John Taylor in the family, you felt
yeah, I always felt on
never
the
felt
outside.
good enough.
Never felt good enough, and so I started
what-
questioning things. I started looking at things. That was a big feminist movement back then, and started reading some books about how the church was treating people, and I just really started to look outside and looking outside of what the church was telling me. That truth didn't stand up anymore, and
Do you think other sisters, especially, I think they're the ones that carry some of this burden a lot more maybe than the men do. Do you feel like there's others who probably feel this way, that they don't feel adequate or that they're not doing enough?
I think so.
think
I mean,
that's
I think
true?
so because everyone I know who has left,
Yeah.
looking back now, is free to say that yes, that's how they felt. Yes, that's how they felt about the temple.
It's hard to be
Yes, that's how
honest though
Right.
when you're in it, right?
Right, because it's like that's the rug you stand on, and I would have defended the church to my death, baby.
Yeah.
That's a big statement, but until the day I said I
agree.
don't believe it.
I agree.
Until I felt like I had a place to stand on the other side. And
Wow.
so I think you don't really know, so to speak to other people about other people, you don't really know where they are behind that facade of
Yeah.
what they say is true.
Because they're not really willing to share.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah.
It's scary. It was one of the hardest things I did in my life.
Well, I'm proud of you for having the courage to do that and to be able to do that. And you actually weren't being drawn to Christianity even at that
No.
point. You went through like a 20-year period of
Right. I left,
searching and stuff? What?
When I was 30, I left the church and I got divorced and I went back to school. I tried to push God out with the bathwater, so to speak, but
because if the true church isn't true, then nothing's true.
Is right.
Yeah. Isn't that sad?
It is, and I see a lot of people doing that. But I had a few experiences in those 20 years that God was really showed Himself to me, and He didn't let me throw Him out. So I lived kind of that 20 years as a higher power, new age kind of everything's good kind of life, and that's how I raised my kids. And I went back to school, and I finished and developed a great career in clinical research, and was very successful.
Yeah,
I was successful. My kids are great. I wasn't successful in finding satisfaction, though. I mean, I kept making it. I had the car and the house and the kids in school and all those things, but I still wasn't satisfied. Something.
Did you feel like the answer was in the LDS Church?
No.
Even though you'd left,
No.
Had you backed away enough to say, I don't believe Joseph Smith's a prophet?
Oh, yes.
I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
I completely, I wasn't just inactive. Was
it specific, anything specific doctrinally, or
no, I think
history or anything that...
It's history, learning that there's more history than what we were taught, and that things weren't always what we're taught, and that kind of fear built that you can't look at something outside because that's not faith promoting, or
even though it might be true, you can't look at it.
Yeah, and I didn't believe in that philosophy of the truth should stand any questioning.
Absolutely.
And so I kept seeking satisfaction in other ways, and I got remarried, and that went great for a time, and then that went south, and in a very difficult way. It ended in a very difficult way for me, and it was the first time in my life that I felt really broken, and
like, where do I turn next? Or
I gave up on even the God I thought was there, and I thought, how could this happen to me? But it was out of that where I felt like God just reached down and grabbed me and wouldn't let me run away from Him anymore.
What did He do?
Well, He just started ministering to me through my friends and my family and people who loved me. But I recognized more than that. I recognized a light to it. I felt like it was God lifting me up and giving me hope and building me up. And then He started to send strangers in my life to speak His word. None of the people who were in my circle knew Him.
Yeah, family, I guess, they were upset at you, I'm sure, because you're inactive.
Oh, they were over that.
Oh, okay.
They were disappointed when I first left the church, but they
weren't telling you about Jesus or bringing you around. It was these friends or contacts that...
Well, no, they were, my friends and my family were helping me through this difficult time, but I was traveling a lot for work, and God started putting strangers in my path to
share nuggets with you.
Yeah, to share His word with me. One in particular, I met someone in a bar in an airport in Texas, and Texas was one of my regular places where I travel, and I started corresponding with him by email, and he had sent me an email, and on the bottom he had put Jeremiah 29:11, and that's where God says He has good plans for you, not plans to harm you, and for a hope and a future. And if you seek me with all your heart, you will be able to find me. And at first I thought, well, that's random. And I replied and said, "Are you sure this was meant for me? Did you mean to send this to your mom or what?" But he did, and I had printed it out, and I had gone upstairs in my house, and I was looking at it, and it's like the words came off the page, and of course they didn't really, but it felt like they were ricocheting through my room. Yes. So much that I literally put my hands over my ears and said out loud, "Okay, I hear you, leave me alone." And I really fought. I was afraid to trust something again.
Yeah, of course.
And And I think that's where a lot of people are when they go through the pain of discovering that what they believed was true is not. Yeah. It's difficult to trust something else, and so and that didn't stop. God put other people in my path, and about a month after that, I was in Idaho Falls, and I was having dinner at the hotel restaurant bar, and a little lady, Judy, came in, and she had a red beret on, and she started talking to me. She put her hands on me. She was prophesying, and it was just, I mean, my eyes were probably this big, and she was talking to me. She said that God had a calling on my life, and I had already accepted it in my heart. And she said, I know God sent others to you before me, and He'll send others after me.
And
He'll send others after me. And she said, you'll never see me again. But and she talked about my Mormon family. That she said, don't worry about them. And you know, and she asked me to pray with her to accept, if she could pray with me to accept Jesus as my Savior. And I said yes. I was just kind of like, okay. And we talked for a couple of hours, and then she left. And so I came home, and I thought, well, I guess I'm a Christian. I should go to church.
Really?
Yeah. Other things were happening. Sure. You know, every song that came on the radio was about Jesus, she had told me to read some verses, so I went and got my Gideon's Bible in the hotel and read some of those, and so I went. I thought I'd just sneak in Sandy Ridge Community Church. It was
First time you'd ever been?
Yeah, I used to run.
Was your heart pounding? And
a little bit. I used to run and pass it, and I used to think, what weird little people go to that weird little church?
Yeah.
And so I thought I'd sneak in and just observe. And
Sandy Ridge Community, huh?
And there was no sneaking in, I found out. They were actually set up for a corporate prayer day. That the sanctuary was set up in circled chairs, and I sat in one, and they were praying, and then they would sing, and someone would speak. They were talking about praying for our city.
Yeah.
And then we'd come back to our circles, and people were going around praying, and I finally was like, it looks like it's probably my turn. I said, if you have some food, I can pray over that, because I knew
I can bless the food. But
yeah, but the women's Bible study teacher took a hold of me, and again another grab on, and she's never let go, and so my life didn't change drastically, but over a few short months. I mean, instantly, but it did change drastically over a few short months, and it's like the scales fell away from my eyes. I saw things in different colors almost, and it was just so hungry to know the Word of God, and jumped in. And
so the Bible means something different. Jesus means something different. Explain that just a little bit for this different. Everybody we interview says that Jesus is now different than he was in Mormonism. What's the difference?
Jesus and God, even as a faithful Mormon, I had concerns about God. I used to think of God as kind of like my home teacher, exalted, and I didn't like that. Even my home teacher was a great guy.
Not really an awesome God, right?
And I have a really good role model as a father. I had a wonderful father. Yeah. So it wasn't that, but that wasn't enough to think that that's who my God is. And Jesus, I love Jesus. I used to love Christmas because that's when we focus on Jesus. But which now, being a Jesus follower, it's like every day's Christmas. I don't have that same stress to get all of the Jesus I can in at Christmas, because it's every day. But I didn't really understand the role for Jesus as a Mormon. As a Mormon, I didn't understand really why, because it's beyond being an example or being resurrected. And I thought I didn't understand his suffering for sins, because it wasn't explained the purpose for him as much.
Well, he's our elder brother. He was just happened to be the firstborn of spirit children. You know, he wasn't. He had to progress to become God, and that's so different than the Christian God. Or Christian
and to know
Jesus.
who he is just awesome. I mean, that he's so big, and I can rest with all my confidence and all my assurity in God, who is greater than anything we can explain. I mean, it's, you know, often as a Mormon, and I hear it often, it's like, as a Mormon, we feel like we learned everything about Christianity and then have more. Yeah. And it's actually just the opposite. Nothing, that is not true at all. We knew nothing about Christianity.
No.
And to know that God is so big. A few times over the years, I went into a Christian church, and it was hard for me to even stay because
you mean LDS church or a Mormon
into
church?
a Christian church.
Christian,
and when they worshiped and we just sang about Jesus, I was so overcome that it was almost hard for me to stay. I loved it
because it's such worship and such praise.
Yeah, it resonated with me so strongly that I was uncomfortable, and it was so powerful that we were worshiping this Jesus who is worthy to be worshipped, yet he is the one who pursued me and reached down when I needed him most, and
so wonderful.
Yeah, and just put people in my path.
How about the Bible?
Oh, the Bible. I can't get enough
As a
of the
Mormon?
Bible. It was just a burden, kind of.
Yeah, it's something you carried to church, you know, and made a few quotes out of.
Yeah, I actually found my old missionary Bible that my quad, I don't know if it was a quad or triple combination or whatever, but and I saw that I'd marked it a lot for my mission, and how it underlined and highlighted certain things that would substantiate Mormon doctrine, but I really knew nothing about the Bible.
I know.
And that it had a story from the beginning to the end, that God started preaching the gospel in Genesis, and
looking forward to Jesus.
And it wasn't just different little stories. That it all makes sense, that looking forward to Jesus and then backwards to Jesus, and that it's all about Jesus. That, you know, it's...
We don't get that message in Mormonism.
No, and I have just loved learning, and so I started learning a lot.
Oh, that's so awesome. Well, before we run out of time, you're also involved in an international ministry up at the University of Utah. Would you share that with us a little bit?
Well, soon after I accepted Christ as my Savior, my heart was turned to the nations and missionary work.
Really?
And so one of the big key things was taking the class perspectives, God's view on the world, and it broke my heart for the nations. It's one of those things I wanted to put back together because I knew it was going to change my life again. And it did. It sent me on a course for missionary work, and it took years, a couple of years, to downsize and get out of debt and apply to a mission agency. And I wanted to go any place but Utah. And because now
just to say it, that means Christians send out missionaries.
Yes.
Did you know that before?
No.
No, I didn't either.
No.
They have outreach programs of all sorts
and a whole history.
People.
And and I bargained, I guess, looking back with God, that I'll always have a Mormon ministry because of my family, but could I go someplace else, please? And I got as far away as I could. I was in Kenya, Africa, doing a vision trip with the mission agency, and I met there a man who, he and his wife are from India and doing international student ministry in Arizona. So God put us together all the way on the other side, and he encouraged me and asked me to consider that God had perhaps uniquely prepared me to work with international students here in this environment where I speak the language, not only English, but I speak the Mormon language, which, as you know, all the words are the same, but they're infused with different meanings. And so I understand that. And so I came back here, that was in 2013, and started working with a missionary who was just leaving at the university. And this international student ministry, it's awesome. We have students from, about 10% of the students are international at the U.
But Pakistan,
India, Peru, Japan,
and they all
El
speak
Salvador.
English, you said.
Yeah,
so
they're mostly graduate students or visiting scholars, and so they have to speak English to come here for school. And so we meet every week up there. I have students who are believers and students who've never opened a Bible before, and we do lots of cultural things and fun things, but we also study the Bible and share the gospel every Monday. We have dinner and meet, and it's just an amazing ministry, and for the first time in my life I feel content to be exactly where I am, where God has me.
Do you feel a freedom now that you never felt before?
Oh, a huge
You
freedom.
mentioned earlier that you didn't feel adequate,
never
doing enough.
Yeah.
Isn't that a great freedom that we feel?
It is a freedom. Yeah. Jesus said the truth will set you free.
Well, you know what? We're almost out of time. I did want you to have a moment to just, what would you tell your family, your friends, the LDS people out there?
I would tell them that I love them.
Yeah.
And I don't love the church that they're in.
Not Mormonism. We
Not
love
Mormonism,
Mormons,
but I love them. And I would tell them that not to be afraid of discussing. I would just wish that I could have discussions without the defense and the persecution card being played immediately, but that the truth does stand questioning, and to not be afraid of it. If it's true, it will stand the test of questioning, and that God is faithful and will show them the truth.
Have you been able to talk to them at all? I mean, to your family?
A little bit. I have a nephew and his wife and children who have left the LDS Church and have accepted Jesus.
And they probably feel a great comfort being able to come to you and talk.
They do.
Because who else are they going to talk to?
Right. And so I'm really blessed by that. And mostly, every once in a while, I can have a conversation, but mostly they're quiet when I talk, and they don't have a response when I talk about faith issues. But God continues to keep me here and keep me as a safe place. I feel like He's shown me a safe place. When others are ready to leave, they'll find a safe place, and not to fight. And maybe one day He'll call me to stand up and speak. But right now, I feel like He's called me to just stay.
A little bit. Sharing your story, and it's been so joyful to hear this. Because I know it means so much to us to be able to have this freedom, and now we have it. We want to be able to share it with our families and friends, and let them know that there really is something else if they'll just take the time to
look. And there's a freedom.
Thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you.
That was
thank
wonderful.
You for doing this.
Appreciate you joining us this evening, and we'll see you next week here on the Ex-Mormon Files. Good night.